My name is Sophie. I am 27 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, my life felt simple and bright, like a clear sunny day. My world turned around my fiancé, Mark. He was kind, with warm brown eyes that always seemed to smile before his lips did. He wasn't loud or showy, but he had this quiet way of making everything feel safe and right. We met 3 years ago, working at the same office building, though in different companies. We started with coffee breaks, then lunches, and soon we were spending almost all our free time together. We loved simple things. On Saturdays, we often walked in the city park, buying ice cream even when it wasn't very warm. Mark always chose chocolate, and I always chose strawberry. We held hands, talked about everything and nothing. Sometimes we just walked in comfortable silence. In the evenings, we cooked dinner together in our small, cozy apartment. Mark was better at chopping vegetables, and I was better at making sure things didn't burn. We weren't planning a big, fancy wedding. We talked about a small ceremony, just with our close family and friends, maybe next spring. He gave me a simple silver ring 6 months ago. It wasn't expensive, but when I looked at it, I felt like the luckiest person in the world. Our future felt solid, real, something we were building together, day by day. Life wasn't a fairy tale. I knew that. But with Mark, it felt complete. It felt like home. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I remember I was at my desk working on a report. My phone rang, showing an unknown number. Usually I ignore those, but something made me answer. A calm voice, a woman, said she was calling from City Hospital. "Are you Sophie Bellwether?" she asked. "Yes," I said, my hand suddenly feeling cold on the phone. "Why was the hospital calling me?" "It's about Mark Henderson," she continued. "There's been an accident. He was brought in about an hour ago. Can you come to the hospital?" Accident. Mark. Hospital. The words didn't seem to connect properly in my head. It felt like listening to a story about someone else. An accident? Is he okay? My voice trembled. "He is stable now, but the doctor needs to speak with you. Please come as soon as you can," the voice replied, still calm but firm. My heart started beating fast, like a drum inside my chest. I mumbled a thank you and hung up. My report, my desk, the office, everything faded. I grabbed my bag, told my boss I had an emergency, and ran out. The taxi ride to the hospital was the longest ride of my life. My mind raced. What kind of accident? How bad was it? I tried to stay rational. Maybe it was small. A broken arm? A fall? But the way the woman spoke, it sounded serious. I looked out the window, but I didn't see the city streets. I only saw Mark's smiling face in my mind, and I prayed, harder than I ever prayed before, that he would be all right. At the hospital, the bright lights and the clean smell felt strange, too normal for the fear I felt inside. I hurried to the reception desk. "Mark Henderson," I said, my voice shaking a little. "There was an accident. They called me." The person at the desk typed his name into a computer. "Yes, Mr. Henderson is in room 304. The doctor is with him now. Please wait in." "The waiting area just down the hall. The doctor will come speak with you soon." Waiting felt like torture. Every minute stretched into an hour. I sat on a hard plastic chair, twisting the strap of my bag. Finally, a doctor came out. He looked tired but kind. He introduced himself as Dr. Evans. "Sophie?" he asked gently. I nodded, standing up quickly. "Mark is stable," he said. and I felt a huge wave of relief wash over me. He has a serious head injury, a concussion, and some cuts and bruises. But he is awake now. That's a good sign. Awake? Can I see him? I asked, hope fluttering in my chest. Maybe it wasn't so bad after all. Yes, but I need to tell you something first, Dr. Evans said, his expression becoming serious. The head injury, it seems to have caused some memory loss. Amnesia. We're still assessing the extent of it. Amnesia? Memory loss? My mind tried to understand. Did he forget the accident? Did he forget the last few days? That seemed manageable. Unsettling, but manageable. What does he not remember? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. We're not sure yet, Dr. Evans said carefully. It's best if you see for yourself. Just be prepared, Sophie. He might be confused. He led me down the corridor to room 304. My heart pounded against my ribs. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open slowly. Mark was lying in the bed, his head bandaged, an IV drip attached to his arm. His eyes were open, looking towards the window. He looked pale and tired, but it was him. It was my Mark. Mark? I whispered, stepping closer to the bed. Relief made my voice thick with emotion. Oh, Mark, my love. You're awake. I was so worried. He turned his head slowly towards me. His brown eyes, usually so warm and full of recognition when they looked at me, were blank. There was no smile, no spark of knowing me. Just confusion. Maybe even a little fear. He looked at me like I was a complete stranger who had just walked into his room. Then, he looked away from me, towards Dr. Evans, who had followed me in. Mark's voice was weak, raspy but clear enough. Doctor? He asked, his eyes flicking back to me for a second, then away again. Who is she? The air left my lungs. It felt like the floor disappeared beneath my feet. Who is she? He didn't know me. Dr. Evans put a gentle hand on my arm, but I barely felt it. All I could see was Mark's face, the face I loved, more than anything in the world, looking at me without a single sign that he had ever seen me before in his life. My world, the bright, sunny world I lived in just hours ago, suddenly went completely dark. He forgot me. The days after that first terrible moment in the hospital room blurred into a painful routine. Every morning, I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest, a mix of hope and dread. Hope that maybe, just maybe, today would be different. Dread because, deep down, I suspected it wouldn't be. After a quick, tasteless breakfast, I went to the hospital. I spent hours there, sitting in the chair beside Mark's bed, watching him. It was the strangest, most difficult thing I have ever done. He looked exactly like Mark. The same brown hair that always fell slightly over his forehead, the same line of his jaw, the same hands I knew so well. But when he looked at me, his eyes were empty of recognition. There was no shared history there, no spark of the love we had built. It was like looking at a perfect copy of Mark, but without the soul I knew. I saw Mark, but he was not my Mark. He was polite, always. He answered my questions politely. He thanked me politely when I brought him fresh juice or helped adjust his pillows. But it was the politeness of a stranger, distant and careful. In the beginning, I tried gentle reminders. I thought maybe something familiar could unlock a hidden door in his mind. One afternoon, I brought a small photo album from our apartment. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. "Look, Mark," I said softly, pointing to a picture of us laughing on a beach last summer. "This is us. Remember? We went to Sandport Beach. You tried to teach me how to skip stones, but I was terrible at it." He took the album carefully and looked at the photo. He studied it for a long moment, his brow furrowed slightly in concentration. Then he looked up at me, his expression unreadable. "We look happy," he said quietly. His voice was flat, just stating a fact he observed. There was no warmth, no hint of memory. His eyes were still empty, like looking into a calm, deep lake with no reflection. He handed the album back to me. "Thank you for showing me," he added, politely. My heart sank. It felt like showing a beautiful painting to someone who couldn't see colors. The nurses were kind, especially one named David. He was gentle and seemed to notice my quiet sadness. He often checked on Mark when I was there. Sometimes he would offer a small smile or a quiet word. "It takes time, Sophie," he told me one day, seeing me staring blankly out the window after another failed attempt to connect with Mark. "Head injuries are complex. Memory can be unpredictable. Be patient with him and be patient with yourself too. This is hard for both of you." His words were meant to comfort, and I appreciated them, but patience felt like an impossible task. How long could I be patient? Mark himself was struggling. I could see the frustration in his eyes sometimes. He knew he was missing parts of his life, big parts. Sometimes he asked the doctors questions, his voice tight with confusion. "Why can't I remember things? Will it come back?" Other times, he would just lie there silently, staring at the ceiling, looking lost and alone. His confusion made it harder, for me too. I wanted to reach out, to hold him, to tell him everything would be okay, like I used to. But he was a stranger now. My touch would mean nothing, might even make him uncomfortable. So I just sat there, feeling useless. Weeks passed. 1 week became 2, then 3. Nothing changed. Mark's physical injuries healed well. The doctors said he was recovering physically, but his memory of his recent past, especially his life, with me, remained a complete blank. He remembered his childhood, his parents, basic facts about the world. But the last few years, the years we had spent together, were gone. Every day was the same visit, the same polite stranger in Mark's body, the same aching emptiness in my chest. The initial hope I clung to started to fade, replaced by a growing exhaustion. I began to question everything. Did he ever truly love me if it could all be erased so easily? That wasn't rational, I knew. It was the injury, not his feelings. But the thought still hurt. I started wondering if my visits were helping him or just making things harder. Was seeing my hopeful, then disappointed face every day causing him stress? Was I just torturing myself, clinging to a ghost? Some evenings, after leaving the hospital, I would just sit in my car in the parking lot, tears silently rolling down my face. The simple, bright life we had built felt like a distant dream now, and I didn't know if I had the strength to keep reaching for it when Mark didn't even know it existed. Visiting him felt like reopening a wound every single day. Could I keep doing this? I wasn't sure anymore. Another week dragged by, filled with the same quiet visits and polite, empty conversations. The hospital started to feel less like a place of healing and more like a place where my hope went to slowly fade away. I found myself making excuses to shorten my visits. I told myself Mark needed more rest, that I shouldn't tire him. But truthfully, I was tired. Tired of the constant ache in my heart. Tired of searching for a spark of recognition in eyes that remained blank. Tired of pretending to be okay for the nurses, for Mark, even for myself. One gray afternoon, I sat in the usual chair by his bed. Mark was quiet today, mostly looking out the window at the rain streaking down the glass. He seemed calmer than before, less frustrated, maybe just resigned to the gaps in his mind. I watched him, the familiar profile, the way his hair curled slightly behind his ear. A wave of sadness washed over me, so strong it almost took my breath away. This man who looked exactly like my Mark felt miles away. I seriously considered telling him I wouldn't visit every day anymore. Maybe it was time to accept that the Mark I loved was gone, lost somewhere in the damaged pathways of his brain. Maybe seeing me only reminded him of a life he couldn't grasp, causing him pain I couldn't see. And it was definitely causing me pain. Tears pricked my eyes, and I quickly looked down at my hands, hiding my face. Was this it? Was it time to let go? I sat there silently for a long time, just listening to the quiet sounds of the hospital, the distant beep of a machine, the soft squeak of Nurse David's shoes as he walked past the door. I thought about leaving, just getting up and walking away. But then something stopped me. A memory surfaced, uninvited but clear. It was from a few months ago, a lazy Sunday morning. We were making pancakes in our little kitchen. Mark was trying to flip one high in the air, like in the movies, but it landed half off the pan. We both laughed so hard. While we were cleaning up the mess, a silly little tune got stuck in my head, and I started humming it. Mark joined in, and soon we were humming this nonsense tune together, still giggling. It was such a small moment, meaningless to anyone else, but it was ours. Without really thinking, almost unconsciously, I started humming that same simple, silly tune very softly, barely above a whisper. I didn't look at Mark. I just kept my head down, staring at my hands clasped in my lap, expecting nothing. It was just a quiet sound filling the silence, maybe more for my own comfort than for him. I hummed the little melody through once. Nothing happened. Mark continued to stare out the window. I sighed quietly, feeling a little foolish. Of course, it didn't do anything. Why would it? I was about to stop, ready to finally stand up and leave, when I noticed a change out of the corner of my eye. Mark had turned his head away from the window. He wasn't looking directly at me, but his gaze was directed towards my side of the room. His brow was slightly furrowed again, but this time it didn't look like frustration. It looked like listening, like concentration. He tilted his head, just a fraction, as if trying to catch the faint sound better. My heart gave a little jump. I kept humming, my voice barely audible, almost afraid to break whatever fragile moment was happening. He slowly turned his head further until he was looking right at me, and his eyes, they were different. Still no recognition, no memory flashing back. But the emptiness was gone. Instead, there was curiosity, a clear, focused interest. He watched my face as I hummed the last few notes. When I finished, the room was silent again, but it felt different, charged with something new. Mark didn't look away. He kept looking at me, studying my face. Then he spoke, his voice soft. "That song," he began, then paused, searching for words. "It sounds nice, quiet. He hesitated again, then added, "It feels familiar, maybe?" He didn't sound sure. It wasn't a statement of memory, more like a question, a guess. But it was the first time he had shown any reaction to something from our past, even a confused one. And he had looked at me, really looked as he said it. Just then, Nurse David came in quietly to check Mark's chart. He glanced from Mark's curious face to my stunned one, and a small, almost imperceptible nod passed between us. A silent acknowledgement that something, however small, had shifted. Mark didn't suddenly remember who I was. He didn't call me Sophie. But he had connected with something, a tiny thread reaching across the blank space in his mind. He had noticed me, the person sitting beside him, humming a tune. It wasn't the flood of relief I had dreamed of, but it felt like a tiny light had been switched on in a very dark room. It wasn't the old hope returning, the hope that my Mark would come back exactly as he was. It was something else. Something smaller, more fragile, but real. A different kind of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the absolute end. Maybe it was the beginning of something else entirely. That small moment, the moment Mark noticed the tune I hummed, didn't magically fix everything. His memory didn't come flooding back. He didn't suddenly look at me and see his fiancé, but it changed something important inside me. Standing there in the quiet hospital room, seeing that flicker of genuine curiosity in his eyes instead of polite emptiness, I understood. I had been trying so hard to bring back the past, to find the Mark I knew before the accident. But maybe that Mark, the one who shared all those memories with me, was truly gone, locked away where neither of us could reach him. Pushing him, showing him photos, telling him stories. It wasn't helping. It was just highlighting what he'd lost, and maybe making him feel pressured or inadequate. The tiny light I saw wasn't a sign of the old Mark returning. It was a sign of the new Mark, the person sitting in that bed right now, noticing something in the present moment. And maybe, just maybe, that was where I needed to focus. So, I made a conscious decision. It felt like turning a page in a book I didn't want to finish, but knew I had to. From the next day on, I stopped trying to force the past. When I visited Mark, I didn't bring old photos or talk about remember when. Instead, I started talking about simple, present things. I told him about my day at work, described the funny squirrel I saw in the park outside the hospital, or read aloud from a book I thought he might find interesting, even if I didn't know his tastes anymore. I treated him gently, like someone I was getting to know for the first time. Because in a very real way, I was. It wasn't easy. Every time I looked at his face, my heart ached for the man he used to be, for the life we had planned. Sometimes I still had to fight back tears when he smiled politely, a smile that didn't reach his eyes in the way it used to. But I tried to focus on the person in front of me. This Mark was quieter, more hesitant. He seemed observant, watching. People listening carefully, perhaps trying to piece together the world and his place in it from the clues around him. Slowly, something shifted in our interactions. Because I wasn't pushing him, he seemed more relaxed around me. He started asking questions, not about the forgotten past, but about the present. "What book is that?" he asked one afternoon. "Did you say it rained today?" Small questions, but they were directed at me, Sophie, the person sitting there with him. One day, he looked at me thoughtfully. "You visit me a lot," he said. It wasn't an accusation, just an observation. Yes, I replied simply, my heart beating a little faster. Why? He asked, his gaze direct and curious. I took a breath. Because I care about you, Mark, I said softly. I didn't say, I love you, or I'm your fiancé. It felt too complicated, too much pressure for him right now. Because I want to see you get better. He seemed to consider this. He didn't ask more, but he didn't look away either. A few days later, as I was getting ready to leave, he stopped me. Wait, he said. I turned back. What is your name again? My heart clenched for a second, the old pain flaring up. But I pushed it down. This was progress in its own way. He was asking. It's Sophie, I said, trying to keep my voice light and kind. He repeated it slowly. Sophie, that's a nice name. He looked down at his hands for a moment, then back up at me. Will you come back tomorrow, Sophie? Yes, Mark, I said. And this time, the smile I gave him felt a little more real, less forced. I'll be back tomorrow. Mark is still in the hospital, but the doctors say he might be able to go home soon, maybe to his parents' house initially, as he still needs support. I don't know what the future holds for us. Will his memory ever return? The doctors say it's possible, but not guaranteed. Can we build something new? This stranger who looks like my Mark and me? I honestly don't know. The thought is scary and sad and confusing all at once. Losing the Mark I knew, the love we shared, is the most painful thing that has ever happened to me. My heart still aches with that loss. But sitting with this new Mark, talking about the rain or a squirrel, seeing him slowly start to engage with the world again, with me, even as a stranger named Sophie, it taught me something. Life can change in an instant, break your heart in ways you never imagined. But it also showed me that love isn't just about shared memories. It's also about showing up, about patience, about accepting what is, instead of only mourning what was. It's about kindness, even when it hurts. It is sad. He forgot me, the woman he planned to marry. Our shared past is like a story only I remember, now. But maybe friendship can grow from these small moments. Maybe that is a new kind of start. Love is strong, I still believe that. But sometimes, for love to survive, it has to change its shape. And maybe, just maybe, I am strong enough to change with it.